The movie opens with gangster boss Do-jun and his wife Hiran. Together, they have built a billion-dollar AI system called Nabi, a network that allows them to expand their drug business across the globe while making an absurd amount of money along the way. Meanwhile, on the streets, a low-level dealer is busy collecting pills when narcotics detective Chong-sik catches up to him. The man tries every trick he can think of to talk his way out of trouble. Unfortunately for him, Chong-sik has heard them all before. A few moments later, the dealer finds himself in handcuffs. Elsewhere, former gang boss Yang Gang is finally released from prison after serving 10 years. The problem is that while he was locked up, the world kept moving without him. His once powerful organization has completely fallen apart, and only 3 loyal men remain by his side. When Yang Gang learns that another boss has taken over his territory, he immediately decides to pay the man a visit. That man is Do-jun. However, the meeting does not go as planned. Do-jun doesn't meet with Yang Gang and drives away. What he doesn't realize is that he has a much bigger problem on his hands. After uncovering evidence of his drug operation, Chong-sik and his team have already infiltrated one of his warehouses and are preparing to move in. Meanwhile, Yang Gang is furious over being ignored. After spending 10 years in prison, this is not exactly the welcome back he was expecting. Determined to make Do-jun pay for the humiliation, he heads straight to his office the next day. But when he arrives, he's caught completely off guard. Instead of a rundown gang headquarters, Do-jun operates out of a luxurious office in the middle of the business district. The place looks more like the headquarters of a multinational corporation than a criminal organization. Yang Gang enters alone and finally gets the chance to speak with Do-jun. He introduces himself as the former boss of Incheon and proposes that they join forces and run the underworld together. Unfortunately for him, Do-jun finds the suggestion hilarious. Rather than taking him seriously, he openly mocks him before ordering security to drag him out of the building. That afternoon, Chong-sik and his team launch a raid on Do-jun's warehouse. And if there's one thing Chong-sik enjoys, it's chasing criminals. The moment the operation begins, he charges in and starts taking down gangsters one after another by slapping handcuffs on them. As Chong-sik fights his way through the warehouse, he spots several of his teammates being overpowered by Do-jun and immediately moves in to stop him. Desperate to escape, he grabs a worker and holds a knife to her throat, using her as a human shield. Chong-sik quickly pulls out his taser, preparing to end the standoff. Unfortunately, things do not go according to plan. The taser hits the hostage instead. Thankfully, before Do-jun can take advantage of the chaos, Chong-sik pins him down and handcuffs him. Later at the police station, reporter Ara arrives to meet Chong-sik. The two clearly have feelings for each other, but neither is willing to admit it. The next day, Chong-sik heads to a cafe to meet his ex-wife Sarah and their daughter Yeonju. As usual, he's running late, something Sarah is clearly tired of dealing with. But Yeonju insists on waiting for her dad and immediately brightens up when she sees her father. Seeing how happy her daughter is, she decides not to start an argument and quietly leaves them alone to spend some time together. During their meeting, Chong-sik gives Yeonju a watch he bought for her. Unfortunately, his timing couldn't be worse. Yeonju happily tells him that her stepfather Min-sok already bought her an expensive smartwatch, and Chong-sik is slightly disappointed. Thankfully, Yeonju quickly promises that she'll use his watch whenever she wants to call him, which is enough to put a smile back on his face. The following day, Chong-sik arrives at Yeonju's school performance. Instead, he finds Min-sok already sitting there waiting. The moment the two men see each other, the atmosphere immediately turns competitive. Before long, they're arguing over who deserves to be called Yeonju's father, and neither is willing to back down. Their stubbornness eventually reaches the point where they end up squeezing into the same seat while continuing to bicker. While the two men are busy acting like children, Sarah is driving Yeonju to the school. Since Yeonju has come down with a slight cold, she stops by a pharmacy to pick up some medicine before continuing the journey. However, after leaving the pharmacy, something goes terribly wrong. As time passes, neither Sarah nor Yeonju arrives at the school. At first, Chong-sik and Min-sok assume they're simply running late, but when repeated calls go unanswered, both men begin to worry. Their fears are confirmed moments later when Chong-sik receives a phone call from Hiran. Without wasting any time, she tells him that Sarah and Yeonju have been kidnapped. If he ever wants to see them again, he'll have to make sure Do-jun walks free. The call ends, and Chong-sik immediately rushes off. To his surprise, Min-sok follows him. When Chong-sik orders him to stay behind, he refuses. Knowing he won't change his mind, Chong-sik reluctantly agrees, and the two men put their rivalry aside as they begin searching for Sarah and Yeonju. The two quickly track down Sarah's abandoned vehicle and review the dashcam footage. The recording reveals exactly what happened. Several men intercepted the car and forcibly took both of them away. Realizing they have no choice, Chong-sik and Min-sok reluctantly agree to work together. After thinking it through, Chong-sik comes up with a risky plan. Since Do-jun is scheduled to be transferred to the prosecution office, they can intercept the transport and get him out. Chong-sik's job is to alter the transfer route while Min-sok's job is to crash into the transport vehicle since he claims to be a pro driver. Later, the operation gets underway. Everything seems to be going according to plan, until Chong-sik notices the vehicle Min-sok has chosen for the mission. Instead of using an ordinary car like he was told, Min-sok shows up in a pet company van, but with the transfer already in motion, there is no time to come up with another plan. As the transport approaches the intersection, Min-sok carefully times his move and accelerates toward the target. The only problem is that he completely misses. Then, out of nowhere, another vehicle comes speeding into the intersection and slams directly into the prison transport, overturning it. The unexpected collision creates exactly the opportunity they need. Min-sok quickly pulls Chong-sik from the wreckage, and together they drag Do-jun out of the overturned vehicle before escaping in the van. What they don't realize is that the vehicle responsible for the collision wasn't driven by a random bystander. Behind the wheel sits Yong-gang. After being ignored and humiliated by Do-jun, it seems the former gang boss is out for revenge. Back at police headquarters, the chief reviews the footage of Do-jun's escape. Rather than believing Chong-sik has gone rogue, he reaches the opposite conclusion. Based on everything he knows about the detective, he's convinced Chong-sik is working some kind of plan. As a result, he orders his team to locate Chong-sik as quickly as possible to offer him assistance. Meanwhile, Chong-sik and Min-sok attempt to interrogate Do-jun, but the gangster refuses to cooperate. With no other choice, they contact Hiran and demand a location for the exchange. Instead, she gives them a new problem. Before any deal can happen, she tells them to retrieve Nabi from their house. After arriving at the property, Chong-sik secretly bribes the officers guarding the residence and manages to sneak everyone inside. Once there, Do-jun heads for a hidden safe that can only be opened through a bizarre sequence of movements that looks less like a security system and more like an awkward dance routine. Afterwards, they retrieve Nabi, a highly advanced system worth nearly 100 billion won, and the foundation of their entire criminal empire. While this is happening, Yong-gang's men finally track down the pet company van, and they immediately sets off in pursuit. The chase doesn't stay secret for long. Before long, Chong-sik notices a familiar vehicle following them, and quickly realizes who's behind it. After all, he was the one who put Yong-gang in prison 10 years ago. Moments later, the roads descend into chaos. As Yong-gang's men close in, Min-sok does everything he can to shake them off. For a while, it actually works. Unfortunately, he then decides to attempt a dramatic drift. The drift goes about as well as you'd expect from a veterinarian. Within seconds, the van ends up facing Yong-gang's vehicle head-on. Thinking quickly, Min-sok throws the van into reverse and manages to escape temporarily, but only long enough to crash into another vehicle. The collision creates exactly the opportunity Do-jun has been waiting for. Grabbing Nabi, he runs out of the vehicle and everyone gives chase, including Yong-gang. The pursuit finally comes to an abrupt end when a gunshot echoes through the area. Yong-gang has reached Do-jun first. Unfortunately for Do-jun, he has also run himself into a dead end. Even then, he continues acting arrogant, which quickly proves to be a mistake. Growing tired of his attitude, Yong-gang shoots him in the abdomen. The impact sends Do-jun tumbling over the edge of a cliff. By the time Chong-sik and Min-sok arrive, Yong-gang is gone. Looking over the edge, they discover that Do-jun somehow survived the fall after landing on a large branch protruding from the cliffside. Using his rock climbing experience, Min-sok carefully makes his way down the cliff and secures Do-jun, while Chong-sik helps pull them back up. The rescue is successful, but a new problem immediately appears. Do-jun has lost a massive amount of blood. They can't take him to a hospital because the police are searching for them, but they also can't let him die. That leaves only one option. Chong-sik suggests for Min-sok to operate on him, but the suggestion sounds ridiculous to Min-sok. After all, he's a veterinarian, not a surgeon. But Chong-sik tells him to think of Do-jun as a dog, and strangely enough, that seems to help. After a tense operation, Min-sok successfully removes the bullet and stitches the wound closed. Later, while waiting for Do-jun to wake up, Chong-sik asks Min-sok how he met Sarah. He smiles and admits it was love at first sight. One day, Sarah brought an injured stray puppy into his clinic for treatment, and he knew she was the one. Eventually, Do-jun regains consciousness and finds himself being questioned about his love story as well. When asked about Hiran, he reveals that she was once a brilliant IT expert working for a major company, while he was nothing more than a small-time gangster. Their worlds couldn't have been more different. Yet somehow, Hiran became fascinated by him after he stormed into her office causing trouble. As their relationship grew, Do-jun shared his vision of building a drug empire powered by her artificial intelligence technology. Most people would have run in the opposite direction, but she didn't. Instead, she waited for him while he was in prison, and after his release, the two built their criminal empire together. Meanwhile, Yang Gang and his men are driving away when one of them suddenly asks the most important question of the day. Did he grab the AI program? Yang Gang casually admits that he didn't, and everyone starts yelling at him. After all, the program is worth nearly 100 billion won. Realizing he may have just left behind a fortune, Yang Gang immediately orders everyone to turn the car around. But by the time they arrive, both Do-jun and the AI program have already disappeared. Elsewhere, Chong-sik, Min-sok, and Do-jun finally arrive at the safe house, only to discover that something is wrong. The entire place has been trashed, furniture is overturned, and signs of a struggle are everywhere. Before they can fully process what happened, they receive a call from Yang Gang. It turns out he has kidnapped Sarah, Yeonju, and even Hiran. If they want to see any of them alive again, they'll have to hand over the AI program. At the same time, the police investigation begins moving quickly. After tracing Min-sok's identity, the officers discover that he is Chong-sik's ex-wife's current husband. To anyone looking from the outside, the situation appears extremely suspicious. With Chong-sik now traveling alongside gangsters and fugitives, many officers begin to believe he may have been bribed. Nearby, reporter Ara overhears part of the conversation and starts digging into the case herself. While looking through Chong-sik's locker, she discovers a watch with an SOS signal. More importantly, it is linked to the watch Chong-sik recently gave Yeonju, meaning it could potentially reveal her location. Meanwhile, Chong-sik prepares for the exchange and tells Min-sok to stay out of it, as the operation is far too dangerous, but he refuses. So Chong-sik injects him with a sedative and leaves him in the van. Afterwards, Chong-sik finally contacts the police chief and explains the entire situation. He reveals that he has prepared a scheduled message containing all the evidence and instructions. If he fails to make contact within 3 hours, the message containing his whereabouts will automatically be sent. Meanwhile, the hostages are being held inside a warehouse. During their captivity, Hiran grows fond of Yeonju and quietly admits that she wishes she had a daughter like her. Hearing this, Sarah pleads with Hiran to help Yeonju escape. Pretending she urgently needs to use the restroom, Hiran lures the man to the door. The moment it opens, both women throw themselves at the gangster and hold him down while telling Yeonju to run. Yeonju immediately escapes and manages to reach the docks nearby. Fortunately, Ara spots her first, after introducing herself as Chong-sik's friend, and perhaps her future stepmother. She quickly hides the girl inside the cabin of a yacht, as she notices the gangsters searching for Yeonju. Afraid the child's hiding place will be discovered, Ara decides to distract the man. Despite putting up a fight, she is eventually captured. Elsewhere, Min-sok finally wakes up from the sedative and immediately checks the tracking signal from Yeonju's watch. The location leads to a completely different warehouse from the one Yeongang provided. Convinced that Chong-sik is walking into a trap, Min-sok rushes off to warn them. What he doesn't realize is that the gangsters have already taken the watch Yeonju was wearing, and by following it, the trio end up walking straight into the trap. Outnumbered and outmatched, the three men are quickly overpowered and taken captive. Meanwhile, Yeongang finally gets the chance he's been waiting 10 years for. Still furious that Chong-sik was the man who sent him to prison, he decides that simply killing him would be far too easy. Instead, he locks both Chong-sik and Min-sok inside an industrial freezer. To make things worse, plastic bags are pulled over their heads before the door is sealed shut. As the temperature continues to drop, Chong-sik quickly comes up with a plan. He tells Min-sok to use his mouth to pull off his socks so he can poke breathing holes through the plastic bag. After some extremely awkward teamwork, the two manage to help each other breathe. Using every bit of strength they have left, Min-sok eventually manages to free Chong-sik, and together they begin searching for a way to escape. Unfortunately, the freezer door is made of thick steel and refuses to budge no matter how hard they hit it. As the freezing temperature slowly drains their energy, the situation begins to look hopeless. Eventually, the two men sit together trying to conserve body heat. After spending most of the movie arguing, they finally admit that they may not dislike each other as much as they pretend to. Still, just as they're about to give up, Chong-sik convinces Min-sok to try one final time. Using a crowbar and every ounce of strength they have left, the two launch one last desperate attempt. This time, the door finally gives way. Elsewhere, The rest of them are being held inside a warehouse. While the hostages are tied up, Yonggang turns his attention to the AI program Nabi. Hiran tries to explain the value of Nabi, but Yonggang doesn't understand any of it. To him, it's just a computer program. Frustrated, he destroys the system and decides the real solution is much simpler: get rid of Dujun and Hiran, then reclaim his position as the boss of Incheon. But the moment he begins threatening Hiran, Dujun finally snaps. Running purely on adrenaline, he breaks free from his restraints and launches himself at Yonggang with a flying kick, before freeing Hiran. The attack catches everyone off guard, and moments later a full-blown fight breaks out throughout the warehouse. Dujun fend the attackers off while Hiran free the remaining hostages. Despite being heavily outmatched, the ladies refuse to sit on the sidelines and do whatever they can to help. Just when things begin turning against them, help finally arrives. A tractor suddenly bursts into the warehouse. Min-sok and Chong-sik charge into the fight and quickly even the odds. With everyone working together, Yonggang's gang is gradually overwhelmed until only Yonggang himself remains. After a brutal fight, Chong-sik finally defeats him and slaps the handcuffs on him once and for all. With the crisis seemingly over, everyone immediately begins searching for Yunju. That's when they realize Dujun and Hiran are missing. During the confusion, Dujun and Hiran have quietly slipped away and escaped on a nearby yacht, but it is the same yacht where Yunju is hiding. Realizing Yunju is now trapped with the fleeing couple, Min-sok comes up with a plan that sounds completely insane. Moments later, the two men climb to the top of a construction crane overlooking the harbor. While Min-sok focuses on the rescue, Chong-sik is having a much harder time. Despite being a fearless detective, he has a serious fear of heights, and one look down is enough to make him freeze in place. Min-sok quickly secures Chong-sik to the parachute harness before making the jump. As the two plunge through the air, Chong-sik spends most of the descent screaming while Min-sok calmly deploys the parachute. Against all odds, they land directly on the moving yacht. Dujun and Hiran are finally captured, and Yunju is rescued safely. With the case finally resolved and everyone reunited, life gradually returns to normal. Having gone through so much together, Chong-sik finally realizes that Min-sok was never his rival. He was simply another father figure who wanted the best for Yeonju. Sometime later, the family attends a school event together. When Yeonju takes the stage, she tells everyone that she has two dads and considers herself twice as lucky because both of them love her. The heartfelt confession leaves the two men emotional. After the performance, the group gathers for a family photo. But at the last moment, Chong-sik steps aside, allowing the three of them to take it together. Meanwhile, he finally stops running from his feelings and gives himself a second chance with Aira. And with that, the movie comes to an end. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you for watching. And if you're enjoying these movie recaps, don't forget to subscribe for more. See you in the next one.